Welcome back, everyone. I'm Colin and today we're going to be covering a very generalized topic, and that, of course, is the art of road surfaces. Now, as you guys can see, today we do have some gravel with a little bit of snow and ice, although I think I'm filming this video a couple of days too late. If I'd filmed it last weekend, it would have been covered in snow. Moving on, I received a comment not too long ago about road surfaces and road conditions. Now, obviously, we can't really cover all of that stuff in just one video. It would be about 14 hours long, but I will try my best to simplify it into something digestible. Now, this video will be a very generalized kind of video. We're going to be talking about most road surfaces and most conditions, for the most part, the stuff that I've been dealing with lately. I just got done with the gravel section. We do have some bad things with gravel. Gravel does allow you to have less grip on call for most of the time. Like out here is pretty loose gravel, so I can kind of get this car to slide regardless of how many horsepower this thing has, which is probably like 25 to the wheel. If you don't have snow or ice or a big parking lot that's regularly covered in water, gravel is a great alternative for, conserving your tires and also just having a low power car where you want to be able to break traction and get used to it being outside of the traction wheel. Gravel's a great place for that, and I highly recommend driving on gravel. Driving in loose surfaces is just going to make you a better driver when it comes to packed or great dry asphalt driving, just because you're used to not having that grip. You're more willing to accelerate harder and brake harder coming into things because you know your car's limitations on looser surfaces. But with gravel, you do have this kind of weird thing that happens. I'm sure to you guys that drive gravel roads all the time, this is not going to be that big of a thing, but for you city dwellers, it's something that you just kind of don't think about until you experience it. And that is just, you take a gravel road that's been freshly graveled, it's going to be super nice and loose, and you actually have very limited amount of grip versus something like this where it's relatively packed in but still kind of loose on top. You've got this kind of loose effect, but you can get grip when you ask for it. So you do have that, but once traffic goes through an area for a certain amount of time over a course of weeks or months, you're going to start notice tire tracks. Now those tire tracks in dry gravel is no big deal. Usually the lighter colored stuff, that's going to be where you have the most amount of grip because that's hard packed dirt. And for the most part, depending on what kind of dirt you have in your area, you'll have more grip for the most part. Now, obviously, if you are just looking to slide around, you're going to be looking for the loose surfaces. So coming into a turn, you might be transitioning from the tan or the beige color dirt to transition over to the blue. You're going from the beige to accelerate quickly and get over to the blue so you can break the car loose easily and have a nice slide around a corner. But that's just one of the things that happens with gravel and just most roadways to begin with. Now, going on from there, we're going to talk about some of the downsides to gravel. Now, there's not many, and honestly, I don't think they're too big a downsides. Washboard / braking bumps, I know they're two different things, but I use them kind of interchangeably. All brake bumps are washboard, not all washboard are brake bumps. Anyways, washboard is something that occurs from a lot of traffic. So it doesn't happen all the time in all the places, but it is something that does start to form usually after a rainy season. What it is caused by, and I could be wrong, so correct me if I am wrong, but my understanding of it is most daily drivers out on the roadway are made to be as comfortable as possible. Now, they have figured out over the course of 40, 50 years that the most comfortable kind of shock reciprocates at a certain frequency and is valved to a certain frequency. Now, that's all good and dandy, but when you get on a gravel road, you hit a bump and the dirt is kind of soft, so it's, more malleable. That wheel's going to skip and bounce and bounce and bounce at that frequency for a certain duration, right? Depending on the speed of travel. Now, if you get a bunch of vehicles, all vehicles are tuned for comfort. So now you have a bunch of vehicles with the same suspension setting, hitting that same bump in that same pattern, in the same speed, is going to cause washboard. Washboard is not fun. It can actually damage your axles over hard use. If you're accelerating really hard through it, it can really mess up your gearbox and your CV axles. Although, as long as you're aware of it and you kind of, lift off and just kind of coast through that stuff or try to avoid it as much as you can, Washboard really isn't that big of a deal, it's just uncomfortable. You know, slow down a little bit prior to that, because once you hit those washboard or brake bumps, you're not gonna have nearly as much grip, and you'll usually just slide across the top. Potholes happen. They just do. Water piles in an area, cars drive over it, whatever. Potholes happen. So on gravel roads, you gotta be careful with that. I'm sure you guys will notice I hit a bump earlier. Talk about gravel when it's wet. Now, gravel when it's wet, usually for the most part, if it's a nice little mist throughout the whole day, it can actually give you some benefits. Usually you'll have a little bit more grip for accelerating because your tires can kind of dig into that gravel a little bit better, and can give you a little bit more grip to a point. Now, obviously, if it's been torrential downpour, you're going to have a lot less grip because now everything's just muddy and boggy, and it's not so much fun to slide on mud like it's ice. And it just kind of gets all over the car. It packs your wheels and tires up with mud and debris, which can cause a number of problems, such as if you get mud packed into your wheel, it can actually act as a lathe inside of your wheel, and it will cut a hole or could damage your caliper and or rotors by doing that. So I don't drive in mud that much, so I've never really experienced that, but I have heard that is a pretty common thing, especially in the world of rally. So if you do have the forethought to get wheel scrapers for your car, that is a good little upgrade you can do, and that kind of helps with snow and ice as well. Snow will pack into your wheel. It won't do too much, but if you have drums, or it might deteriorate your braking ability with the drums. So wheel scrapers are a nice alternative for any car, really, for most seasons, and it's not gonna affect your car when it's dry and, you know, just cruising around the road. Moving on from there, we have snowy and icy conditions on gravel. Now, snowy and icy conditions can be a little bit tricky for those of you that don't experience it too frequently. I promise it's not that bad if you just go out and drive in the snow a little bit here and there, do your daily routine, don't go do anything stupid or try to do anything that, you know, your car would already kind of struggle with when it's dry. You'll probably be okay. Keeping a little bit of a head of steam when you're driving on snow and ice, as long as you're not coming into tight corners, can be a big benefit. I've noticed, at least with front wheel drive cars such as this and my other vehicle that I drive, front wheel drive vehicles have a tendency to get stuck when you're stopped and trying to get going. Just something with the open differential, and usually how people will park is they park uphill, and you never want to park uphill. Just like if you're riding motorcycles at the dunes, you always want to park downhill. Just a quick little tip for you guys, that's what I found to be helpful. Open differential vehicles though, power is always going to go to the wheel of least resistance. To mitigate this, at least on a front wheel drive car and some rear biased braking vehicles that are rear wheel drive, you can, to some extent, be accelerating. That one wheel will start to spin, and you can apply a little bit of foot brake, and that will kind of add equal resistance to both wheels and hopefully get that other one spinning. Sometimes though, you are just stuck. But as long as you keep moving, you're usually okay. The issue in snow and ice comes from making quick adjustments very rapidly and not thinking ahead. This comes back to just keeping your eyes up and out. There's really not much to it. You just have to be aware and conscious of where you're looking. If the car gets stuck, usually it's something I did to get the car stuck. Never once has it just often slid off into a corner without me doing something stupid like ripping the handbrake. That has happened a couple of times. But as long as you're thinking ahead and you're being smart about things, you probably won't need to do too much. Now, the issue that comes up is when a lot of traffic, or 2, 3, 10 cars have driven over the same spot and made the same tracks in the powder. Now you run into an issue. I call it packed snow. That's kind of what is right here, right in front of me. It's very slippery. Obviously I'm in Converse, but this has almost no grip. I could lock up my brakes and slide for 40 feet on this stuff. But packed snow turns into ice. It will melt slightly throughout the day and then refreeze at night, making it ice, which is even more slick, and the more people that go over it kind of takes off any sharp edges that this packed snow or ice might have, and makes it slippery, more and more slippery as the days go on. And snow and ice will stick around, but if you do happen to get snow and ice throughout the year, don't be surprised when you're coming down a road that not many people traverse, and in shaded areas there's going to be just snow and ice still there just because it hasn't melted yet. I hope that I covered the gravel section pretty well. Again, if I forgot anything, let me know down below and we'll take care of that. Now, moving on.